Okay, everybody. I always say, almost a little bit of a joke, I always say on this very special episode of The Complete Advisor, this one is special though, we are going to have a conversation with Mark Roberts and Stacy Drake. Now, Mark Roberts has a massively successful practice here in the Kansas City Metro. Stacy Drake is really almost his right hand in the practice. And what we're going to do on this episode is Mark does workshops. He does them throughout the Metro, and what we are going to do is we're going to peel back the layers. We're going to take a look at how they do those workshops, but we're going to start not day of, we're going to start months before. In fact, we're going to talk about how they lay out their plan for the year. We're going to talk about what happens day of, not just from Mark's perspective, the advisor, the presenter, but we're also going to talk about what Stacy is doing, setting the table, getting things set up at the event, the marketing that goes into it, what happens the day after. So take a listen, let me know what you think. Here we go. For those of you that don't know Mark, I will brag about you just a little bit. Top producer when it comes to securities on the registered side, top producer when it comes to non-registered products. A mover and shaker in the Kansas City area with an amazing practice and amazing staff, a big staff for a big practice. So, Mark, always awesome to have you here, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so let's just dive right in because we do have a lot to talk about. So let's set the table, and we're going to talk about the workshops that you do. One of the many ways that you market the practice, one of the many ways that you're out working with the public, getting prospects. So just from your executive level, from the executive hat, the CEO of your practice, let's talk about the event that you do and your vision for it. Will you walk us? Let's start there.
So everything starts with marketing. Mm-hmm. And so think of it as a funnel. The more marketing you do, more mailers or Facebook, whatever you do, the bigger that number, then you'll get more people to come to the workshop. So by the time you do mailers, then you funnel it down to the people who attend a workshop. Mm-hmm. Then you funnel that down to people who go from the workshop to having appointments with you. Then you funnel that down to the people that have appointments with you and actually do business with you. So the bigger you start off here, mm-hmm. the bigger, the wider it can be down here. That's the key there. If you start off skinny right here, then everything's getting skinnier and skinnier and skinnier because it's just the law of numbers. You're not going to get everybody to come in from an appointment. You're not going to turn every prospect into a client. So you got to get marketing to start here. Now for us, I've identified over the years with help in the office of like Stacy specifically of how do we market in Kansas City. Mm-hmm. And we've kind of found that we came up with like a grid of 6 locations in Kansas City and kind of think of Kansas City as 6 quadrants, and we hit that quadrant twice a year. So we're at that particular library or that particular community center twice a year, so that way we're not oversaturating the same spot over and over and over.
When did you recognize that pattern? Because I know you've been, although you are a younger man, you are a very experienced man. When did you recognize that and set up that pattern looking at the quadrants? Do you go north of the river too?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, we do all over. I think sometimes, I would say sometimes there's, let's just say like a gut feeling that I would have on something mm-hmm. that I can't verify, but then I would go to Stacy and then she would run numbers and then she would look at it way more analytically, and that's not normal something that she would do, but she was doing that early on to help us try to figure this out so we can have a better marketing plan moving forward than what we had in the past. Mm-hmm. And she was able to identify that there were certain locations that were better than other locations. You know, you got to work around holidays. You got to work around specific things like in Kansas City, the Big 12 tournament, just things like that. You got to try to work around so you're not doing a workshop at a time where there's a good chance you're going to have a low turnout. Mm-hmm. Like election day, don't have a workshop on election day. A lot of people aren't going to show up for that. You know, that kind of stuff. So she's helped us with those analytics. So when you're looking at the analytics, Stacy, great opportunity to pull you into the conversation here. So Stacy, your role at Affinity with Mark. What's your title? What do you do over there?
Marketing director. So anything marketing related with workshops, bringing those leads in, mm-hmm. all on me.
Wow. Yeah. No small thing because of the size of the practice.
Big shoulders she wears. She's got big shoulders.
Big shoulders. Nice. Okay, so let's talk specifically about this workshop. And so when you do this workshop, let's start off with topic. Let's talk about location. And how did you select your location? So do you want to, from a high level, you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Let me take the topic and I'll let her take the rest of that.
Perfect.
So topic for me, I've learned over the years, it needs to be a topic that there's a huge percentage of people that go to other workshops, so they're not getting that topic out of the workshops. And a huge percentage of people who have advisors that they love their advisors, but they're not getting talked about with those particular topics. So I've always have done workshops forever and ever, it seems like, on how to maximize Social Security income and tax saving strategies, which basically boils down to talking in simplistic terms about Roth conversions. Simple two things that impact people's retirement, but no financial advisors talking about it at a workshop, and they're not even talking to it about that with their individual clients. So that's how we get this big funnel and get a tremendous amount of people from that workshop to actually say, yes, I want to have an appointment.
Yeah.
Because I think we average we're in the 80% range of attendees want appointments.
Nice.
We're that high. And that's because I'm a good speaker. I can be direct to the point. I can have some fun with it, this kind of stuff. But more importantly, it's the material.
Yeah.
I'm talking on something that I don't care how much you love your advisor. Your advisor's not talking on this topic, and they're recognizing that on their own.
If I'm not mistaken, because I think I have a copy of it at my house, you wrote a book with a title that was kind of along that line, didn't you? How's that for a little name drop there?
That was. That first book was titled, Why Didn't I Hear About This Earlier? Because that's the number one question I get from prospects that come in the door or just people at the workshop. Well, Mark, if it's that easy, why would my financial advisor talk about it? Mark, if it's that easy, why doesn't my CPA talk about it? Mark, if it's that easy, why doesn't the HR department of my company talk about it? Well, the answer I tell people, and I bring up the question and then I give them the answer. It doesn't make us money to talk about this. If I try to help you maximize Social Security, there's nothing for me to sell you that helps you maximize your Social Security. I'm just helping your overall retirement. And if I talk to you about tax saving strategies, I'm really triggering some taxes today to have massive tax savings in the long run. But it doesn't make me any money to do it because whether I manage your money in an IRA or a non-IRA or a Roth IRA, I get paid the same thing because it's based on the dollar size, not based on what kind of account it's in. So it's a lot of work that we have to do, service work, conversations, paperwork, all this kind of stuff to process this kind of stuff to do what's in the client's best interest that doesn't make us any money. But that's what gets our foot in the door is because we're talking about stuff that their current advisor who they love isn't talking about.
Yep. Okay, so you've got a great topic. You are a great presenter. So I'm just gonna second that emotion here. Also, I think you were named in the book too, if I recall correctly.
That one.
No? Okay, doggone it, that's embarrassing. We'll edit
She's in the second book.
Okay, you're in the second book. Okay, let's talk about. So we have the topic. We've got the speaker. Now we need to get people there. So first, location. How do you select the location? Because you have lots of choices. What do you look for?
So the biggest piece that we need to talk about is that it is done from our nonprofit side. So we have nonprofit, so it's very educational. We're only giving educational information, and I think that hits with people. And so we go to local libraries, community centers. So with that nonprofit status, we're able to get into the local in this area, like the Johnson County libraries, and get in there and do those events for free.
Nice.
There's no charge.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's a community center because it's all local, and people are familiar with those within their communities.
So with that, how are you filling the room? How are you reaching folks?
So we do mailers. So we've done many things over the last few years to try and see what's worked. And even after COVID and all that stuff, social media changed a little bit with Facebook marketing and all that. And we have found that the mailers are working. And so those go out to prospects 2 weeks prior to the event, and they register. We don't have to do anything on that side. And then it goes from there.
Are you doing so mostly? So right now you're mostly doing mailers. There is a Facebook social media element.
Very little, yeah.
Do you? And you're tracking who's coming from where.
Yeah, and it's 90%, 95% is all from the mailers. Yeah.
So how big of a net? What's the demographic look like? Just roughly.
Demographic, we're looking between 55 to 70. We actually have a filter on there for assets too. I mean, there's a lot of options that you can do with that. So we can play around with that if we're not seeing good results from one way or another. Right. So it's awesome.
Anything that pops out to your head? And I mean, you both have a lot of experience with this. Anything that has surprised you as you look at demographics, or where maybe you thought like this? Any weird anomalies that pop out in your mind?
I can just tell you, I mean, I think we just have it so fine-tuned with location and everything that we're doing. I mean, we do have to play around with it every year here and there, but overall, no.
Nice.
There's probably two things that we have to try to coordinate, is that there are certain places we want to go, and they have a larger venue. So we know we can do a larger mailer for that larger venue. And then there's other places we'll go where it's like a library that we want, and it's got a much smaller room.
Yeah.
So we need to do a smaller mailer for that, because if you do a big mailer for that, then you have to turn people away because you can't get them in there.
Yeah.
For fire code and all that kind of stuff. So that's one thing we kind of have to focus on is how do we do that? I personally prefer doing community centers over libraries.
Why?
Well, I just think the setup is nicer. The rooms are nicer. They take care of the rooms. They're the ones who set up the room and take down the rooms, that kind of stuff. Whereas when we do them in libraries, a lot of times Stacy and I are having to pull out the chairs, pull out the table, set up the room the way that we want to, and then take it all down when we're done. So it's just a lot more work involved with doing a library. But, we work together as a team. It's not a big deal, but community centers have a tiny, tiny cost where libraries are free, but the tiny cost is worth the headache.
I would imagine, fact check me here. So I would imagine that I can't think of a library that's been built that's in this century. So everything would be, I would feel like, my local library in Prairie Village it's an awesome library, but it
Corinth,
is.
yeah.
Yeah, it's dated. Do you guys ever go there?
Well, when you're doing a workshop at a library community center and there's no meals involved, that automatically has an image of education, not so much salesy. And then you get the invitation from a nonprofit that also feels non-salesy. And then you see what the bullet points are and what's going to be discussed. That also sounds non-salesy. And then one of the very first things I talk about when I get up front and I introduce myself is, this is educational. I am not discussing products. I'm strictly going to talk about strategies and teach you how to maximize Social Security and how to minimize income taxes. And they walk out there, and I just, all the time, and it's several times, it's many times after each workshop, I'll have multiple people coming up. This was the best workshop I've ever been to, and I've been to lots of these. And they just like the education side, and we're going to turn them into clients, but they saw it as so much less stressful and anxiety to them versus other workshops they've been to, because all they're trying to do is push a product or push an annuity, that kind of stuff.
Do you, as an aside, you've got a great office, and I know that you do events there from time to time. Is that a whole different set of content?
Honestly, we haven't done an event at the office since COVID.
Oh, okay.
And it's almost just don't need to. And part of it's we just continue to get too big that even though we have one room that can be pretty sizable, we can hold 27 or 30 pretty comfortably.
Yeah.
We always have way more people who want to come than what we can hold. And then we're forced to do it 2 and 3 and 4 times, and we just don't want to do that.
It would be exhausting and very disruptive probably into the office.
But where the difference is we would only be inviting clients to those events, not prospects that we're trying to turn to clients.
We are going to put a pin in that thought because we're going to come back to that later. I even wrote it down. Okay, so let's talk about when you go to the community center versus the library. And I imagine community centers, since they do other events, they would be more easier to work with maybe on the setup side because all types of events happen there. At the event, let's talk. So I had food as a question, and that's crossed off because you're not serving anything. Water?
Nope.
Nothing.
Crackers? Nothing?
Nothing.
I like it.
It's educational. If you're there, it's because you want to learn something, not because we're giving you something. We're giving you knowledge. We're not giving you something tangible.
Yeah. Do you end up in the calendar of events for the library?
No. So they're very specific on that it's not an affiliation. Anybody that's in those rooms, so it's not held by the library or supported by the library.
Gotcha.
But we don't have a problem with any of that. So, and we have a lot of walker buyers that end up coming in sometimes. Mm-hmm.
I like it.
You know what? It might not be in their flyer, but it has the perception that it's being supported or encouraged in some way by that library community because we're there.
Yeah.
So even though it's not like in that flyer, it still has that same vibe.
Yeah. The makeup of the room. Do you have a choice when it comes to classroom style, round tables, audiovisual. I want to go there, and so that I believe that is in your wheelhouse here. So, what do you guys? How do you do it? Rounds, classroom?
So it really just depends on the facility and what their tables are like per se. But we always try to do classroom style. So and that always works, and try and get everybody as close to the front as we can. I don't ever put out. I always know exactly like what we're thinking for numbers, so we don't put out any more chairs necessarily than we have to try and fill the room and force people in close as well. So and that seems to work really well. I have a sign-in table, so everybody signs in, and I get them checked out as they leave too. And then depending on the location, some of them do offer the audio visual that's already there, so you can just plug right in. Otherwise, we have a projector and all of that stuff.
Do you take your gear as backup?
Always.
That's what I figured.
Yeah.
And not only that, you have to take backup light bulbs for the projector, backup batteries for the clicker, and things like this. And just lessons that you've learned along the way. It's like all of a sudden, crud, your clicker doesn't work.
Yep.
And then I'm manually hitting the button on my laptop kind of a thing. Or all of a sudden the light bulb on the projector goes out. You just learn from mistakes. Okay, we got to have these things as backups in case it dies on us in the middle of a workshop.
Yeah, control everything you can.
The important piece of that is that initial walk-in, that sign-in table where they're greeted and I'm talking to everybody. It's not just sign your name here, and I'm actually doing name tags to try and, remember people per se, and I'm going to be really good at that. But and then I'm handing them the materials and then giving them the evaluation and talking to them about, make sure you fill this out. We're going to collect this at the end, so they have that from the beginning and that connection. So
you're
when I
really
do follow-ups,
you're really setting the table. Do they have microphones? Do you like to use a mic or no?
No, I prefer not a mic, but I also have coach's voice. I can project very well, very loudly. And even in the biggest of rooms, and we got like 60-some people there, I'll make sure that all sides can hear me. I'm very good at volume control.
I like it. And you are. I will say that. So with the visual equipment, we got that. So day of. These are usually in the afternoon, evening, morning?
We always do a night.
Okay.
So typically the best scenario is a Tuesday night, Wednesday day. Mondays are kind of crazy for people, usually going back to work and stuff. So we usually do Tuesday night and Wednesday day. It seems to work. However, it all is based on library availability.
How far out do you have to schedule?
Always 3 months in advance. That is what we're allowed to do, is basically 90 days. So I try and target as soon as it's available. I'll try and book it up.
So they only open like one quarter at a time. So you couldn't lock up the next 2 years.
No, but we've got a pretty good process in place how we monitor that and try to stay ahead of that with every 3 months. So Stacy will have a calendar. She knows where we're going to go that entire year.
I'm doing that this afternoon, actually. I'm mapping out the entire next year this afternoon.
Next year.
Nice.
So we have that. We just don't have the exact dates and times. Now, she mentioned Tuesday night and Wednesday day. And the reason why is you don't want to do Monday nights because it's Monday nights. People are going back to work. It's not a great day. But sometimes we're stuck doing a Monday night. Wednesday nights, you also have conflict with church. So you got to deal with that. Thursday night, we don't ever do Thursday nights because we don't work on Fridays. And you need to really call them the day after the workshop. You need to call them within 24 hours. So I'm not willing to ask Stacy to say, hey, will you come in on a Friday and make a bunch of phone calls on our Friday on your day off because we hosted a workshop on a Thursday. So we like Tuesday nights and Wednesday days the best combination, but every once in a while we're forced to do a Monday night or a Monday day or a Wednesday night just because of location availability and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Part of it is we also do a second set of workshops. One is Social Security and taxes, but the other one is on estate planning with an attorney. So now we have to juggle the attorney's availability. And so that adds some added complexities where we're kind of stuck with some other times.
When you do the Tuesday, Wednesday, you're doing the Social Security though.
We would do both.
Or do you bookend? Do you do Social Security and then the estate, or do you?
It would be opposite weeks. We try and skip a week in between.
Okay.
But yeah, Social Security will be the same week, and then estate planning will be the same week. Just a different week.
Yes.
Gotcha. And as an aside, if you did catch what Mark said, your office, unless there's something crazy going on, you are historically closed. You guys do not. You give the staff, everybody, Friday off because of how you run the rest of the week.
It's just easier for everybody to work a couple of hours longer, Monday through Thursday, and they get a 3-day weekend every weekend. That's a perk. I mean, we have a mental job.
Yep.
And like physical jobs, you can be physically tired. Well, we got a mental job. So after 4 days, you could be mentally tired. So I just find that people are more fresh 4 10-hour days than to have 5 8-hour days.
I love it. In fact, just shameless plug for the podcast episode we did on building a winning team, because your office atmosphere is amazing. If you're listening to this podcast or watching it, you may want to go back. It's maybe episode, I want to say it's 4. But it's a great episode. So let's move forward. So it's day of. You've got it's Tuesday. It's Tuesday. What are you doing? Where's your headspace? How do you? So people have it. I mean, I've heard different ways that folks will approach this. Some people will work a normal day. Other people will prep and make sure that they're ready. I'm pretty sure I know your answer just from working with you through all the years now. But tell me what you're doing, say the afternoon of.
All right, so again, back to compliment of Stacy and just the whole team in general. Everything is lather, rinse, repeat, lather, rinse, repeat. Everybody has systems and processes for their entire job for the most part. So yeah, the day of the workshop, it's no different than any other day of the week. It's just if it's in the day, you block off some time in the middle of the day so I can drive there, do the workshop, drive back, and I'm having appointments before, appointments after. It's just one of my appointments in the middle of the day. If I have a 6 o'clock workshop, by the way, it's always a workshop, never a seminar. Seminar sounds salesy. Workshop sounds educational. So we do a 6 o'clock workshop. I just have a full day of appointments. It's just a longer day. But again, I've done the same thing for so long, and Stacy and I have worked together on this for so long. It's like we don't even have to even cross paths. She just does her thing. I do my thing. And it's just there's no hiccups because we've done it for so long.
Sure.
So no, I don't need mental time. But where that adjusts a little bit is I'll get to a workshop, and my goal is to be at a workshop 30 minutes before.
Okay.
Stacy's always there before me. And I'm just going in there. I set up my post-up stand. It's about the only part that I'm setting up. If the room isn't completely done yet, I'll help Stacy set up the room. But I'll leave. I will go somewhere in the community center, somewhere in the library while people are checking, because I don't want to just sit there like having awkward conversations with people as they walk in. I want Stacy to do that, not me. And 2 is that I'm just clearing my head of, okay, I got emails, I got some things I got to take care of. I'm just going to sit in the corner and work on those things. But part of it is just get my head out of anything that was my last couple of appointments. Just get my head on this, and it's not a big deal. But when I talk and coach other financial advisors who do a lot less workshops or they're new into doing workshops, I do tell them, you need to practice.
Absolutely.
And the best way to practice is to record yourself and watch yourself. Because I use the example all the time of pick on the Kansas City Chiefs. When they're preparing for the next team that they come up, sure, they're practicing the plays that they want to play. They're doing all the kind of stuff. They're getting their bodies ready, healed, and they're working out. But you know what? There's a tremendous amount of film study that's not just of the team that they're going to play. It's the film study of what they did on the last game. So I'm trying to say, these are professionals at the highest level. Why don't you be a professional at the highest level? Do a workshop, record yourself, and then watch it. You just got to take, if it takes an hour and a half to do the workshop, then take an hour and a half or 2 hours to watch it when you get home while it's fresh, and learn from your own mistakes. Learn where you missed cues, where I should have said this, but I said it this way and I said it the wrong way, or I wanted to say this and I completely forgot that I didn't say it, but I needed to.
Yeah.
So best film study is watch yourself. So I try to encourage that.
I think the other thing besides professionalism, you've got your money in this. And if you don't study, if you don't practice, you're missing opportunity. You're actually wasting your own dollars by not giving it the best you could give it. I mean, you just wouldn't kind of half asset. I got to curse. That's the first time I've sworn on this show.
I have that ability to bring that out in people.
Thank you. Okay, so you're coming to the community center about a half hour, giving yourself the time, traffic, to make sure you're covered there, right? Yep. How early are you there, and how early do they let you be there, since it's a little different environment?
So our workshop lasts about an hour and a half to an hour and 45 minutes. So we block off the library for 2.5 hours.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so I'm there about 45 minutes early. We will sometimes have people show up 15, 20, 30 minutes early. So, and it doesn't usually take that long to set up the room. But if somebody was in there before or something like that, but it's all put away. So if we're at a library, we have to take it all out and
bring
all
it all
that
out
stuff.
and put it set up.
It's
So
totally fine.
how did you land on name tags? I know not everybody does that, but tell me why.
Well, throughout the presentation, he will also call on people. So, and it just makes it that much more personable. And again, when I'm following up with these people afterwards, I'm kind of remembering. I'm like, when they turn in their eval, I'm like, okay, this is that person. I may make a little note on it, like he was wearing a KU shirt or whatever, and that is just to trigger who that was. Or if they had a specific question, I'll write it down.
Did you always do name tags?
Yeah, but I think we just got simpler with it. All I need is their first name, and I need it large. Because if you're 3 or 4 rooms back in the room, 3 or 4 rows back, I got to be able to see that name and say, Kevin.
Yeah.
But key is you never call on somebody in the audience to ask them a question because you're putting them on the spot.
Uh-huh.
What you want to do is ask a question and let the audience answer, and then you compliment, Kevin, that's the right answer, good job, because that makes it more personable. But if I say, hey, Kevin, what's the earliest you can start Social Security and what's the latest you can start Social Security? You're putting somebody on the spot because what if they didn't listen?
Yep.
Their mind is on something else, they're on their phone. So you never call on the audience. What you do is you ask open-ended questions or a question that it's to the audience and let someone answer.
Let's take a step back, though. So you're coming in, so let's say it starts at 7, and you're coming in the door like right at 7, like featured performer, like you're coming in. So you're not what I call glad handing, hey, great.
5 to 10 minutes ahead of time.
Okay. So are you interacting with people by the desk or?
I try not to. What I do is, by the way, it's always noon and 6.
Noon and 6. Okay.
Seven's too late because it just gets too late in the night and their brain starts to shut down.
Yeah.
So noon and 6, and I'll come in between 5 and 10 minutes ahead of time. And a lot of times I'm going up front. I'm just making sure I have my stuff out. I'm caught here. I'm just making sure that I have my stuff out the way I want it, which it normally is.
Yeah.
But I'm just organizing my thoughts, making sure I get this stuff in order. And I'm kind of just glancing around the room, seeing who's here, doing a quick little head count, trying to make eye contact with people, see who's going to make eye contact with me. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I'll have a little chitty chat. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, so is everybody here for the 6 o'clock Zumba class? Just something fun. And of course, well, you guys look like you're all overdressed. And they might talk a little Chiefs, might talk a little KU basketball, just something to fill a few minutes and just break the ice. Yeah, lighten it up a little bit and just do that kind of stuff.
Okay, so it's go time, right? What are you doing at that point?
So I'll go through and, methodically we have the sign-in sheet, and I'm making sure that everybody's signed in. It's really big on just tracking all the numbers and making sure that everybody's there. And I do pay attention, and as many times as I've heard it that I could recite it myself. I mean, it's very engaging to hear Mark speak anyway, but I will pay attention to what's going on with what folks are saying or their responses, or if there was, somebody that I may need to take a note about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a good, you just mentioned something there that's interesting. So the registration desk is in the room. You're not like outside the room.
Always in the room.
And that's by choice or by the?
My choice, our choice, yeah.
So there's Stacy's also got a great memory, but she also makes notes to help her memory. So she's interacting when they sign in. She's paying attention to them during the workshop. And then she's chatting with them after the workshop when they turn the evaluation, because sometimes they'll go corner her with a technical question or just a general question, and then she's quick to grab that evaluation, make a note, because when she goes back to the office and she starts to call people, she feels like she's already built a little bit of rapport and some kind of relationship with that person. So when they hear Stacy calling, they just remember her from the night before.
Okay, so you've given them when they come, they're not getting food, so they're getting like a pen.
They're getting a folder, and we have some materials in there that talks about the foundation, for that, and then we do a Social Security analysis. It's an example page, and then the COLA facts for like the Social Security. There's a reminder card in there, and then I personally hand them the valuation and talk to them. You got to fill this out because we're going to collect this at the end. So, yeah, I'm really talking to them in the beginning. It's not just sign here.
So, and at the registration table, it's just you.
And I don't sit down, always stand up, face to face, eyes to eyes. Yeah.
I like it. Signage on the table, signage.
We have one post-up stand somewhere in the front corner, somewhere where I'm going to be standing, hopefully not blocking, but that's it. Sometimes the libraries and community centers will put a little sign on the outside of the door that this room is the Social Security room or estate planning room or whatever it is.
And it's probably like a 8.5 by 11 feet
it
white
is.
printed
small.
on. Okay, so let's go back. So it's 6 o'clock. It's go time. You shut the door. You step up to the plate, if you will, And so what I'm curious about is what are things that you're looking for because you've practiced. So we've talked about that. Like if you're doing any event, of course you need to be practiced. You need to be on point with your presentation. So you've got that. We've got that covered. What are you looking for? Like what kind of things do you look for? What kind of things bug you? What kind of things do you feel like you need to address? Go.
So I think there's, let's say, some housekeeping that I do at first. Yes. And I'm pretty methodical on how I do the housekeeping. First is I grab the folder and I say, let me show you what's in the folder real quick. Mm-hmm. And I go through in a specific order. Okay, this is a sample of how to log into the Social Security website. Because Social Security website is not user-friendly. This is what you need to have this. I show them a sample of the Social Security sheet that we give them that does the calculations. Here's a sample one that everybody in this room is entitled to get. I show them a copy of the evaluation. Now, it's a 3-page evaluation, so let me walk you through the 3-page evaluation just so you know about it in advance, and I kind of walk them through these things. Then after I go through all that, then I talk about myself, a quick little introduction about myself, where I have maybe been seen or where I've been had some kind of notarization of some sorts on me. And I'm saying I'm not trying to brag. I'm just trying to give you guys some credibility as to who I am, who's going to be speaking in front of you for the next hour and a half.
Lay your bona fides out.
Yeah, something to that effect. And then I let them know, guys, for a room this size, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor, please. If you have a question, I really want to answer it, but I'm going to ask you not to ask it during the workshop. Because as soon as you ask it, I'm going to be nice and answer it. But likely what's going to happen is I'm going to get more people to ask questions, and then we're going long. Yep. And not everybody in the room wants to hear your questions, and not everybody wants to go long because of your questions. Uh-huh. So if you don't mind, please don't forget, if you have a question, write it down. I will stay at the end, and I will make sure I get all those questions answered. But inevitably, it doesn't matter. You still get that one or two people that have those questions. Yeah. And then when you have that one person that needs to ask 3, 4, 5 questions, you finally have to stop it. I've never kicked anybody out of a workshop, but I've had to kind of politely put them in a place and say, all right, I'm sorry, we're going long. I'm going to have to cut off the questions. I've already announced earlier no more questions. I announced not to have questions, but I've allowed a couple to come through. We're just going to go long. So just do me a favor, hold those questions. Let me answer them for you at the end. So I've never had to be rude to the point to kick them out, but I have had to kind of politely put somebody in their place by, you need to stop with the questions.
Yeah. So what do you, when you're up there and you're looking at the crowd, what are things that you're looking for? How do you get people engaged to the level where you want them engaged?
I'm looking at facial expressions. Mm-hmm. So I've spent a ton of my life reading and studying psychology and understanding people behavior and this kind of stuff. If they're not making eye contact with me, they're usually looking down at the materials. If they're looking down at the materials, then they're not fully listening to me.
Sure.
That's why we don't try to put a lot in the folder.
Yes.
Because we don't want to give them something to be distracted in that folder. If they're looking at their phone, I need to do a better job. I need to say something humorous. I need to get their attention. I need to drop a bigger stone in the water that's not a tiny ripple, it's a big ripple because I need to get some attention. So I'm watching for expressions. Public speaking 101. You look at their expressions, you can tell when they got it. They're nodding their heads at the right time. You can tell when they're really focused. Their eyes are squinting. You see some lines, and you can tell that, wow, I just really hit a nerve with them. I'm really hitting on an important topic. They're focusing super hard, and then boom, you see their forehead light up. Their forehead just relaxed. All the wrinkles go away, and you just realize they just got it. And what I was able to do is I was able to get them to connect themselves with their financial situation with what I just said.
Nice.
And if you can get them to connect with their situation with what I just said, then now your communication's there. So I'm always very aware of body language. I'm also aware of one spouse talking to another spouse too loudly because one spouse probably has a hearing problem and they don't realize how loud they are. So I'm just always looking around the room, but I also give lots of eye contact to everybody. I don't just stare at one person or half the room or the floor or the wall. I'm going around because I want to make everybody know that I'm looking at everybody at different times.
Yeah.
And that at different times, he may be looking at me.
And he's not hidden behind a podium either.
That's a great. Yeah, I was going to ask that.
Right up there. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Are you for the sake of the audience, because I've seen you on stage, are you a stationary kind of guy? Are you walking out amongst the aisles? Are you going to the back of the room and coming back? Or are you kind of back and forth across the front?
More back and forth across the front, maybe slightly off to the side. So like if this is the whole room and I'm standing up here, I will go here, I'll go here, but sometimes I'll go like right here. Okay, but I'm making sure I'm being loud enough to the people over here. And I'm coming over here for a reason because I have several people in the front row over here, and I want to make sure that I'm not blocking them.
Yeah.
So I kind of come off to the side. But I am a mover. I feel like I'm more relaxed when I move, and I never hide behind the podium. If I ever go to the back of the room, it's only because somebody answered one of my harder questions where I pass out my book that's autographed, and I'll go to the back of the room and say, hey, congratulations. Very few people ever get that question right. Nice job for you. So I'm giving them a compliment and calling them by their first name because I got their name tags on it, and I'm giving them a signed copy of that book.
Do you have the is the screen or monitor, whatever's the visual, is it square center, offside? Do you have a preference?
It's always pretty much center. We try and do everything pretty uniform in the room, balanced per se. Yeah.
So I've heard people talk on this topic that the screen needs to be front to the side. I need to be front center. It always needs to be about me. And I've heard that, and I kind of agree with that. But sometimes rooms don't accommodate for that.
Sure.
And so you're kind of stuck because a lot of these new fancier community centers and libraries, they have plugins like in a certain place where you're forced to use your laptop at a certain spot with your projector at a certain spot. Some already have the projector built into the screen, and you're stuck at that. So 99% of the time it's dead center. But I will walk to both sides of the screen. I will never stand in front of the screen.
Right.
I walk over here and I'm on this side for a while and talk, and then I'll walk over here for a while and talk.
So with you mentioned getting people engaged, throwing a bigger stone to get that. One of the things that I've noticed as either being on stage or even being in the audience is, I swear since COVID, people's attention span seems shorter, and they tend to reach for their phone more often. Do you, with the ripples that you do, I mean, how much of that do you accept, and how much of that do you then try and ripple?
I just don't. Sometimes there's just no way to handle a situation without coming across rude.
Yeah.
Not only to that one person, but other people may interpret that to be rude. So I just don't. But what I do like to do is have a little fun sometimes and do it in a fun, playful way and never in a mean way. Every once in a while, I'll get like this heckler who doesn't have a question. He needs to tell me something, and he's trying to correct something I've said, and I clearly know that he's wrong.
Right.
And after the second time of doing that, I say, well, you know what? Why don't you come up here? You seem to know more about this than I do. Let me give you the clicker and let the audience listen to you. So I've actually had to be a little assertive, but that's rare, once or twice a year. But where he kind of gets a little funny sometimes is when you do the 6 o'clock workshop. If somebody yawns, I'll call them out. Karen, I saw what you just did. You know what happens? You do that, I'm going to do that. And if I do it, they all do that. Guys in the audience, you know what I'm talking about? You know what Karen just did? They all said, did she yawn? Because, we all know that, yawning is contagious. Yep. So I'm just kind of having a little fun with her. And then in both workshops, it doesn't matter the day or the night. There's always a question there just to have a little humor. I do things to have some sense of humor in it, but I will go out of my way to make sure some things are a little bit more specifically funny than just casually humor. And one of them is, all right, guys, I'm going to ask you a question. Raise your hand. Only raise your hand if this applies to you. Okay, so here's the question. Who has ever been under the age of 59 and a half before? Well, they all should raise their hand because we've all been under 59 and a half before. So now, guys, the reason why I asked that question is because we've been talking for an hour, and I got about 30 minutes more to go. So physically, you're all still here. I'm checking to see who's mentally still here.
Nice.
So I throw that out there as a way to say, I'm about ready to get into the important stuff, and you didn't raise your hand, so I'm thinking you're not maybe completely paying attention to me, so you better start paying attention now because this is the good stuff. I'm transitioning from Social Security to tax, and the tax is the good stuff.
Let's go back on one thing. You mentioned you're giving out the book. How do you use that? Does everyone get a copy? Do you just bring a handful?
No, specifically 3. 3 that it's signed, and I'll show one just so I can have some credibility. And for people who are watching this, these are financial advisors. Writing a book is great for building yourself credibility. It's not going to be a money-making source. You're not going to put it on Amazon and make a lot of money doing that. I always wrote the book with the intention to give it away for credibility purposes. So I ask lots of questions throughout the workshop because I want hands raised. I want answers thrown out because it kind of gives me energy. I give them energy. But then I will tell them, there's going to be 3 questions I'm going to ask, and they will be harder questions. And I will tell you in advance that this is going to be the harder question. So the first one who shouts out the correct answer free, and I can identify your voice over somebody else's voice, I will give you an autographed copy of the book to say thank you for having the correct answer and beating everybody else to the punch. So again, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get them to be encouraged to be paying attention because they don't know when those 3 questions are going to come up, but at that moment I tell them what's coming up. So right there, now I'm going to start asking that question. I build my story to it, and then I ask my question, and I get the answers, and then I pass out the book.
Nice. Okay, so let's go to a question that just dawned on me. You're wearing a tie today, and I'm not. And there's various degrees. I mean, dress today has definitely changed. It's just changed so much. What are you wearing when you're doing this?
So very specific on that. I will wear a tie, but never the jacket. So if I have a tie on that day, if I was doing a workshop today, jacket comes off. I just feel like that's a little more personable. The jacket with the tie makes me feel stiff, like a salesperson, a little too unapproachable. If I'm like you today, where I'm not wearing a tie, I'll put the jacket on. Keep in that. I put the jacket on because, again, it's that business casual look.
Yep.
Every once in a while, I'm like you. I'm wearing an open shirt, no tie with a jacket, but the room is just hot.
Sure.
Because a lot of these libraries don't control their own thermostat. That thermostat for that building is controlled at some other central location. And with that many people in that room got warm. So I'm just going to take my jacket off, and I'm just going to have an open shirt and slacks on and just be a little bit more casual. And I don't mind that because I find the more casual I am, my words and my personality and that presentation.
Loosens you up a little bit?
It makes me look professional. The words, the personality, the workshop itself, everything about that is professional. So if I need to dial it down to be ultra conservative to just a jacket or a shirt, open shirt, no tie, and slacks, that's fine too.
I like it. Never a polo? Too dressed down?
No. I mean, when you say a polo, you're talking about a vest?
Golf shirt?
No, never. Yeah, that's too casual.
Yeah.
I have a couple of tattoos on my left arm, and I don't let those show in a workshop. So some people.
Do you really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. So
we're talking after.
So some people are offended by that or just think something of it, so they stereotype me.
Yeah.
So I won't wear short sleeves ever.
Interesting.
Always long sleeve.
The things you learn. Okay, so we get to the end, and you said, so this is interesting. I know that some folks do not. Some folks will say that when they wrap, they say, good night, God bless America, and they're gone. So let's talk about your wrap. So and how long are you going? Did you say an hour and a half?
It's a solid hour and a half, yeah.
Hour and a half. So you know that he's getting towards the end. Actually, let's talk about that. So you've seen you've been here. You know what's going on. So you can see that we're like T-minus 10 minutes to ending. What are you doing? Where's your head at?
Getting ready for people that are going to try and leave early. So our goal is to not have the evaluations floating around the city. So, and it is true from like the nonprofit status that whoever signed in, we're checking you out as you come out. So whether you have filled out this, evaluation or not, we're going to collect it. So, and he goes over that, and I'll let you speak on that, and then we can come back to me. But I think, he goes over all of that.
Okay, so you're at the ready back there.
The ready position.
You're landing the plane. What are we doing as we land the plane?
So as I'm done, I'll a lot of times ask a question. Can I get a show of hands? Who can admit that they learned one new thing today? And they always raise their hands. Okay, I won't ask this again, but here's the second question. Who can say they learned at least 2 new things today? Of course, again, they always raise their hands. All right, what you just told me by answering those questions is that you've never been told this by somebody else, a financial advisor, a CPA, another workshop that you've been to, and I've also spoken to you in a language that made sense to you. So I hope that you guys all found this workshop to be a good use of an hour and a half of your time, because I know it's a long amount of time, but hopefully you found this to be a good use and you got yourself educated. But as we wrap up, I'm going to remind you about the evaluation. So I go back over the evaluation real quick. Like I did at the beginning, I hit it at the end because it's important. So without going into detail on the evaluation, what I will say is, guys, I need you to just pause for a minute. I know you started working on your evaluation. Just give me a pause for a second. I want to give you one commitment, but I'm going to ask for one commitment in return.
Nice.
Okay? So here's my commitment to you. You want to come see us? You want to have an appointment? Well, we'll do the appointments, we'll do the analysis work, we'll do the Social Security analysis, we'll do the tax analysis. We're not going to charge you for our time. We're not going to charge you for the analysis. We'll give you a copy of that. We are also not going to pitch any products. We're not going to be selling any products. The only time that I talk about products is the products that you have, and go back to that screen, back on the 3 tax buckets, wherever your money is. I'm not going to come in there and say, oh, that's a bad stock or that's a bad mutual fund. You need to get out of it so I can say something else. So I promise you, I'm not going to try to sell product, and I'm not going to charge you for my time, and I will also give you a copy of the analysis at no charge. What I ask in return from you is that when we have that first meeting, it's going to be on the phone. I ask you to be prepared because we're doing this through our nonprofit and we're giving back. I want you to have out your statements in front of you, your Social Security statements, your pension statements, all of your investment statements. What I don't want to do is call you up and ask you these questions and you have to put me on hold so you can go look everything up online or go pull that stuff out of files. And what turns into a 45-minute phone call just turned into an hour and 15, hour and a half because I'm spending time while you're looking stuff up. So if you don't mind, please be prepared for that phone call. And then my commitment to you is I won't charge you to do this work and to get you educated. My goal is to educate you in a way that you feel empowered to go back and implement these things yourself, or you feel empowered that you're going to go back to your financial advisor and have that financial advisor implement these things for you. Now, I'm saying that. It just completely de-stresses them and takes away the salesy part of it. But I end up knowing that they come to me anyways. As much as they love their advisor, I want to move my money over to you.
Yeah. Are you doing that call or the first call, or is that somebody on the team?
Well, Stacy's always doing the confirming the appointment. Calling, confirming the appointment, that kind of stuff. They'll circle a date and time on the evaluation. She'll still confirm it. If they don't have their calendar and they don't circle a date and time, she calls them to schedule them. But all first appointments, what we call fact finders, are done on the phone, and I do 10% of them roughly, and the other 90% is divided up amongst the 3 other advisors, 30%. So we all have those first appointments on the phone. Every once in a while, somebody asks for that first one to be on Zoom, which is fine. I just kind of discourage Zoom because I can be chatty Cathy, and I definitely discourage the first appointment being in person. I don't want to do a fact finder in person. Because most of the time they're coming into the office unprepared. Yeah. They don't have everything, and it's a waste of my time. And then number 2, they took the time to drive in. I'm going to be chatty Cathy. And what I can normally do in an hour fact finder, I just did it in an hour and a half because they came in and I'm chatty Cathy. So for effective use of calendar time and knowing where my weaknesses are, I've learned I'm better off doing appointments on the phone, and I don't lose interest.
Nice.
I get from fact finder and I schedule that next appointment, and they're excited. But it's how I do the fact finder, and it's how I tee up the end of the fact finder as to what to expect.
With the fact finder, are you using? Are you just taking notes, or are you using something like, I don't even know if Dragon Talk is still a thing anymore, but are you using any kind of audio transcription, or is somebody sitting in the room doing shorthand?
Nope, I'm writing it down. I have a 4-page fact finder. I write down all my answers. The difference for me, I notice with other advisors is, I don't just ask question, get answer, ask question, get answer, and you kind of feel like you're interrogating them. I like to have a conversation sometimes about an answer that they gave me, or I'm going to peel that answer back a little bit more and go deeper into that. Well, tell me a little bit more about that. Tell me what your thoughts here are. Now, I have a couple things I want to bring up, and I'm not sure how to bring it up yet, so let me ask you a little bit more on this. Sometimes I'll just stop and say, well, let me tell you about something. You might not be aware of this. So I use that as an opportunity to make some statements, and what I'm doing is I'm partially giving some credibility to myself, but in a non-salesy way by giving them some education, kind of like I did in the workshop, but on their particular situation. The goal at a workshop is to give them enough to be interested in coming into the appointment, but don't give them too much that they can go out and do it on their own or go back to their advisor. Absolutely.
Okay, so I'm going to step us back. So you've made you've laid out your expectation. You made that beautiful offer, the expectation back and forth. You are literally done with your presentation. You mentioned you take questions, so that means you're sticking around a little bit. How do you control that, and how do you do exactly what you just said, which is not give them too much?
Okay, so I'll stay up front and I'll answer questions one by one, have them raise their hands. And I do tell them, please stay in your seat. Do not come up front. I will answer your questions just by staying in your seat. Now, of course, there's always the occasional person that has to come up. But when they come up, sometimes about half the time it's a question that they should have stayed in their seat and raised their hand for. But half the time they just want to shake my hand and say, this is like the best workshop I've ever had.
That having them stay in their seat is brilliant because I know that when you get done presenting, if people come up in a line, it just kills you when someone's asking you a question that's standing in front of you, and you can see that third person give up.
Well,
it's like, nah, I'm out of here.
Gives up. Plus, I feel like I'm losing control.
Yeah.
And when they come up in person, I have to hear a story just to get to the question.
Yes.
Whereas if they stay in their seat, a lot of times it's less story and just get to the question so I can answer it. Because I want to move on and move on and move on and get the next questions answered. So I don't, like you said, people aren't getting upset because I raised my hand and I haven't been called yet. Well, this is taking too long. I got to go.
Yeah.
So I try to do that.
How do you cut it off? How do you end? Because you can't stand up there all night.
I'm also very good sometimes with saying, I actually have more than one right answer. I have two things in my head that I think are right answers for you. I'm not sure which one's the better answer,
Nice.
but I will have that for you. When we have our meetings, I will know which answer is the better answer for you. Because I never want to say I don't know something, but I don't also want to say I know that here's the exact answer. You got to get them interested to want to come in.
That's great. That's a great answer.
I will leave them hanging for that.
So how long will you stick around?
As long as it takes. But usually the library, especially the libraries at 6 o'clock, they're kicking out at 8. So I have to be done by 7:30, 30 minutes for Q&A, and then clean up the tables and chairs.
So you got a hard stop.
Pretty much.
Have you ever considered just leaving? Have you experimented with that where like you're not taking questions and poof, you're gone?
I think I had a long time ago, but I found that to be less effective because it makes me arrogant. I've done my presentation, out the door I go. I want to be that personable guy because they want to know that I like them and I'm approachable. So if I stay up front, but I'm also very good with body language. I'm very aware of my shoulders, my hands, my gestures, and just my word choice. I'm very aware of these things because I want to be approachable. I want to be personable, but the guy that knows his stuff.
Yeah.
And we're also there for education, right? It's
True.
nonprofit
Good point.
education. Like, you're just not going to leave,
Yeah.
Okay, so Mark's up front answering questions. You're in the back setting times, collecting. What are you doing back there?
Yeah, so our evaluation is 3 pages. So the front is kind of tell me a little bit about yourself, and there's an exercise on the back, and then the appointment calendar. So we've fine-tuned that very much so over the last few years, and even adding specific things that, we can get kind of that asset information or more information than we thought we ever could. And so that's been a great piece. We have a lot of people that just don't want to do it or don't want to fill it out, but Mark does a really great job throughout the presentation of like if there's something, the exercise that we do, if you want to take a picture of it, you're welcome to have that, but we are collecting this at the end. If we can't get that information back, as good as the mailers are and the system that is its kind of own CRM that we have with the mailers, we still want to have their evaluation back and that information to at least try and reach out. I mean, if they're not interested, they're not interested. I'm not going to hound them. But I will just write their name on it and just, that's it. So I'm doing that and taking their name tags so they're not walking out and being funny about it usually. Well, you can have a souvenir or, you can just, I'll throw it away for you type of thing. But it's still just making that connection. It's so huge. But because when I call the next day, hi, it's Stacy from the Social Security Workshop. Oh, hey, Stacy. They already know me.
Yeah. Okay, so room is empty. It's time to go get a good night's sleep. What happens next?
So the next morning, I'm coming in and sorting through the evaluations and all done really by what the prospects look like, kind of in that sort of order, and who wants an appointment, who doesn't, and looking at calendar space and trying to fill those times in and then calling. And hopefully getting a hold of people. I will say it is a little more difficult when we have like a 6 o'clock workshop because a lot of those people are potentially working the next day.
Sure.
But if I leave them a message and then we do send messages or email or other ways, try and get a hold of them so they call us back.
Do you guys do text messaging?
Yeah, we have a message that we've used through our broker-dealer that allows us to send text messages, and it's just generic. It's just
nice
to schedule the appointment. It's all that it's about.
Sure.
Hey, I'm following up with you from the workshop last night. Left you a message, but sometimes texts are easier, so I just thought we'd shoot you a text.
Love it.
And it's just all about just scheduling the appointment.
And people are good to respond that way, especially if they're at work and all that stuff as well. So
yeah, text messaging is just so. It's not even a thought when you get one. Okay, so the next day, you're starting on that process. Do you guys do a like an after action kind of huddle to talk things through, or?
Nope. Lather, rinse, repeat. We've had too many huddles afterwards. Now every once in a while, Stacy will come back and give me feedback. Sometimes it's feedback at the workshop at the very end as we're walking out together, or it's the next morning because she's had a chance to think about it overnight, and she'll give me, you didn't say this, you normally do, or you said it a different way. I like it the other. So she'll do that, but that's not very often. But she's comfortable enough to share that with me when she thinks about it. But for the most part, no. I go about my day doing my appointments. She goes about her day to get those people scheduled on everybody's calendars.
Now, when you get them scheduled, though, at what point do you transfer over any notes, observations that you jotted that Mark wouldn't have seen from the front of the room that you saw from the back? When do you get that information?
My goal is to, on those conversations, is when I'm talking to the folks to get that appointment confirmed, is to learn a little bit more. So easy enough to take their evaluation and I was like,
sure.
Oh, I see you're already collecting Social Security. When did you start? Is your spouse starting? So I'll actually use the evaluation as lead-in questions. Well, you didn't mark asset size. What would you say, like your, kind of nest egg, retirement? Okay, well, let's fill that in. And then that conversation leads into other things, and they open up about when they were planning on retiring or taking Social Security. So then I take all those notes and just drop it into the calendar with the appointment on there and any other notes that maybe I took and, pointers to give to the advisors.
Yeah. Okay, so the advisors, you or somebody else on the team, when it's time for that first call, that first appointment, the fact finder, they're able to look and see like not only additional demographic and factual information, but maybe some observations you had. They're able to see that right as they're doing that call.
And or potentially those folks' goals. Here's where they are. So it's very set up, hopefully. We don't always get a hold of everybody, of course, but to have those conversations. But it is super helpful. And they'll use the evaluations too, just like that, some of their questions.
Stacy probably is understating the importance of what she does because she does such a good job of that. Every little detail that she does get to gather is information that the advisors will use, and it sets us up for how we want to ask a question a certain way versus a different way, or allows us to go into an area that we might not go into, kind of thing. Sometimes on a fact finder. So everything from what she does at the workshop to the phone call to schedule the appointment, those are great. Where it's a little harder is the appointment was scheduled and they never talked to. So it's done through the compliance texting app, or it's done through email, things like that. Then you never really got a chance to talk to them. So
kind of cold,
a little colder, but it's still, we got the fact finder, we got some information. It's just nice when Stacy gives us a little extra information, but she can't always control that. Some people are just that way.
Ideal situation for as far as timeline of getting that fact finder scheduled. When's the sweet spot time wise?
So on our calendar there, we usually offer it a week to 2 out. Sometimes we stretch it a little further just based on availability, but if we can get them in with the first 2 weeks, it's our goal.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So we offer, if we have a Tuesday night workshop and there's calendar availability, I'm trying to at least start those first appointments hopefully on Thursday, if not then the next week.
I like it. What kind of, just from a high level drip mechanism do you have for someone that didn't set an appointment?
So through our marketing company that we use, there is a whole CRM. So when those mailers register, that person registers, it pulls information about them, potential assets, where they lived, where they worked, all that stuff. It's probably one of the better systems I've ever seen. And there is actually a drip campaign that's set up in there. That will follow up for, even if you didn't show up, or, if you did show up and you want an appointment but you haven't talked to me. I mean, there's all sorts of things that kind of go through that too. And then we'll add them to our system as well.
Gotcha. Perfect. Okay, so I didn't put this on our questions, but something for you to ponder real quick. And Stacy, I'll start with you. So Mark, you get a little extra time on this one. So you all have been doing this for a while, and you've seen... to quote Bon Jovi, you've seen a million faces and you've rocked them all. But as you've done this process, what are some things that you think, this is a big one, but some things that you've learned, some things that you thought were going to be awesome that didn't work out, and some things that you thought were just, no one's going to care, and that really resonated? I know that's a lot, but anything that through your years that maybe you've talked to some other offices and you hear them and you're just like, oh, kids, what are you guys thinking over there?
So a lot of things, I will say a lot of the things, I've been with Mark for almost 7 years now. It's very hard to believe. But
good 7 years.
Yes, it's been great.
Blink of an eye.
Yeah. I will say it's just, they did a lot of trial and error before I even came with different things, and then it was really fine-tuning things, I feel like, when I showed up. And then we've just kept fine-tuning it along the way. I mean, I just can't, right off my head, just think. It's
anything y'all were doing when you first got there that you don't do anymore?
We don't do dinner workshops, dinner lunches. We don't do the golf workshops where we transition from
golf.
restaurants to golf courses. We don't do that anymore. And now it's just straight educate. And then we stopped also advertising as Affinity Asset Management. We strictly advertise only through our nonprofit, the Foundation for Financial Education. And those are some big evolutions right there for us.
Gotcha. Okay, so for you then, any other things that maybe you used to do as put your presenter hat on here. Any things you used to do that you don't anymore?
I used to be very focused on how do I get this done in an hour. I got to get this done in an hour. And I couldn't. And I would get this to an hour and 20 minutes. And I'm like, yay, Stacy, I just saved 10 minutes. We went from an hour and a half to an hour and 20. But how did I do that? What did I cut out? I had to have cut out something.
Yeah.
And you can't necessarily put your finger on that. So basically, honestly, I just gave up. There's no rule, and the mailers don't say that it's going to be an hour long. There's no law that says you can only do an hour workshop. You can keep people's attention for an hour and a half if you are good enough, if you are engaging and your material is good enough.
Yep.
The thought there is, well, you're only going to keep their attention for an hour. Well, that's because you suck. Okay. If you're good at what you do and your material is good enough, you will keep them interested for that full hour and a half, and very few people ever leave us early.
Yep.
So I've learned to give up on trying to make it shorter. I got them captive. Let me go longer, because the longer I go, the bigger that funnel is. And as it is now, you go from this big funnel here to the number of people in the workshop, we're averaging well into the 80%. As to the number of people that come that want appointments, that's huge. And we do that 4 times a month, 2 on estate planning and 2 on Social Security, and we're getting 80% a month on that. That's a lot of activity constantly coming in the door, and that's how we can produce our numbers. Another thing I've learned over time is, and I say this a lot in a lot of training events with other advisors, greed, urgency, why Mark? Everything I say has to have an underlying tone to greed. If I'm talking about something and I get them to feel greedy and this is going to benefit me, I got their interest.
Yep.
Urgency, not emergency. Emergency causes panic. Emergency means I'm going to call my financial advisor, whatever. Urgency means I'm putting some sense of urgency that they need to act and act sooner. And find something that it's market related, the end of the year related, something tax related that you can use to create urgency. But the most important thing out of the whole workshop is why Mark? Because the material can be great, but the underlying theme is you can't get this from your advisor. You can't do this on your own.
Yeah.
You need Mark Roberts. You need Affinity Asset Management. So it's all about the why Mark, but it doesn't ever come across that way. So it's like subliminal ways that I say things that just makes them say, I need you. And I love my financial advisor, but I'm going to have an appointment with you.
Yeah.
So greed, urgency, and why Mark is probably the most important thing that I've probably learned over the years.
And that's something I get from, even some of the pre-conversations that I have. So why do you need all this information again? Well, we're going to, provide you with this analysis. Well, I have an advisor. That's okay. We're just here to educate you. And so I have to, talk them back off the ledge and talk them into the why Mark too.
The why Mark. That's awesome.
Yeah. I
think that is I have a ton of other questions, but I think that is actually a perfect spot for us to wrap.
Well, I got one more thing. Let me just give you one more thing that I think that's important to advisors that are listening to this that are doing workshops. So my advice is to do a workshop every month. It's better to do a workshop every month and control your mailers. Do a smaller mailer if you want every month, than to do a bigger mailer and then do the workshop every 2 or 3 months. Because if you do it every month, you create more consistency in your activity, and more importantly, you get better at your cadence and how you speak. If I speak, if I do it every month, that's just one set of workshops, that's 24 times a year, versus if I do it every 2 or 3 months, it's a lot less. So I become a better presenter if I do it every month. But if I go to a certain part of Kansas City, like your library that you mentioned, we know that it's one of my least favorite workshops, and one of my least favorite libraries. Room is small, holds very little, and it's never any tables, and it's sometimes hot. So we know that we don't do a larger demographic mailing to that area because
Sure.
we need to shorten it. So I tell people that are in smaller towns, like I just had this conversation with a buddy of mine, Frank Oliver, who's in small town Longmont, Colorado, about an hour north of Denver, and he kind of has 3 towns. And I'm advising him to do a workshop every month. I'm saying do it every month. Don't have gaps because you don't have the capacity for that. Do it every month. Just control the mailers so you can control the size. Same thing with Mike Binstock in Minneapolis. He's on the way suburbs, and so he thinks that I should do this every 2 or 3 months so I can do a big mailer and do a big turnout. Well, you know what? Sometimes you could be super effective with 10 or 12 people in the room and have it more intimate than to have 30, 40 people where you got this great energy. It feels good and it makes you feel important that you got all these people here and all these people see there's a lot of other people here. But you get better as a presenter if you do it every month versus every 2 or 3 months.
Great name check there. I appreciate that. Shameless plug. So I had Frank on here, Frank Oliver. He does a different type of presentation. We had the exact same conversation in this room. That's going to be a great episode. Business owner question then. You just mentioned something that I hadn't even pondered. By doing it every month, what does that look like as far as, in our industry, there's ebbs and flows as far as business comes in. Does that level that out a little bit?
Oh, completely. I mean, and that's the key is systems and processes, everybody having, just an even consistency level of flow. But sometimes there's just things you can't control. There's just going to be where you don't do a workshop every 4 weeks. It ends up being 6 or 7 weeks just because of my vacation or the library or community center's availability. And I'm going to tell you, every time I do that, and my first workshop, I just feel a little rusty. I do it every month, and I've been doing it for years, but that first one I still feel a little rusty. The second one I feel better at. But if you do it every month, you do create consistency for yourself. You create consistency for marketing. You create consistency for the people in operations that are preparing the salespeople for their sales appointments. And then it keeps the salespeople sharp because we're having the same kind of conversations over and over and over and over, and without those ebbs and flows. So the smoother you can even that out on the ebbs and flows, everything becomes better. Everything becomes more consistent, and you become more efficient and more productive.
I like it.
It's a well-oiled machine.
Well-oiled machine.
And a lot to do, Stacy. She's the well-oiled machine. She's the oil.
Nice. And this is why you have such a great team, the teamwork and the camaraderie and the way you run your practice. Okay, with that said, this is the end of today's of our episode. I thank you both for being here. I really appreciate it, Mark. Thanks for taking time out of your schedule. Stacy, thanks for taking time out of your schedule to be here. For everybody listening, of course, I have a favor to ask of you, and that is if you get a chance, hit the like button, but maybe more importantly, if you're on Apple, it says it's follow. I used to say subscribe, and my wife one time said, I was looking how to subscribe on iTunes, and I can't. On Apple Podcasts, I'm looking for the subscribe button. It's actually follow. I think it's the same on Spotify. And then we're on YouTube. We're on Pandora, iHeartRadio, Google, Amazon. We're everywhere. But if you subscribe or follow the show, then that means that you get notified whenever we drop a new episode. Super valuable. Thank you so much. And we'll see everybody next time.
Thank you. It was our pleasure.